Hello and welcome to News 18. The guns may have fallen silent after the recent Iran US MOU on 18th June, but this conflict has raised many important questions about the safety of sailors, the security of sea routes, and how war affects world trade. Sadly, three Indian sailors lost their lives while doing their daily jobs, keeping global trade moving. As the world prepares to mark World Seafarers Day on 25th June, this is a good time to honor the work of sailors and talk openly about the dangerous conflicts zones and how to protect them. To help us understand these issues, from sea laws and naval operations to India's trade needs and the safety of Indian sailors, as well as worldwide, we are joined by Commodore Srikant Kesnur, a highly decorated and respected Indian naval officer. Commodore sir, thank you for joining with us. It is a pleasure to have you on the show, sir. Namaste, sir.
Namaste. Thank you very much and pleasure being with you again.
Thank you, sir. Sir, three Indian sailors died in the recent US strike on the motor tanker Satbello in the Gulf. Operationally, what may have gone wrong, and legally, who bears the responsibility in such cases?
Um, First, let me begin by conveying my deepest condolences to the families of the sailors. I think it's very, very saddening when Indian seafarers, lose their lives in the line of duty as it happened here. Now, there are various versions, obviously, about what happened. The American version, if you like, whether you want to take that or not, is that this ship, Setabelo, was a blockade runner. That means a ship that was trying to flee from the blockade that they had set up, was trying to interfere, and it was either transporting contraband material to and from Iran, and therefore it hit the ship. What are the legal and operational issues here? Let me just explain it a bit. Now, is the blockade by any country a legal instrument of war? Certainly, blockade is a tenable legal mission, and in fact, many people believe that if blockade helps in reducing casualties rather than a direct conflict, then it is preferable. Now, where the experts are divided on is since there was no declaration of war, since President Trump had actually told Congress around the 59th or 60th day that the conflict had ended, then was blockade legal? Because blockade is an act of war. Now, you can't impose blockade without resorting to war. Be that as it may, a blockade was enforced by the US as was promulgated by them, as was broadcast by them over several channels. And can they interfere or can they stop, interdict ships that are going to and fro, supplying what are defined as contraband or war waging material? There's a list of these things. Uh, yes, that is legally tenable. Now, what are the problems here, though? The problems are, where have you hit that ship? Have you hit her somewhere close to coast of Iran, somewhere in the Strait of Hormuz, or have you hit her somewhere far off from what is your so-called blockade geographical area? Have you defined the area? In some of these cases, remember there were three ships that were hit: Setabelo, Marivax, and Jalveer or Jaivir, whatever. And one of them was hit off the coast of Oman when it was unladen. That means when it had discharged its cargo, so to say. So the questions that arise are whether these were actually blockade running, were they fleeing away, were they non-compliant with US instructions as US maintains, or were they innocent, victim of wrong targeting or even malicious targeting? That is one question that needs to be answered. It's not come out very clearly. The second is that was it necessary to hit a missile? In this case, Cittabello, a missile from an aircraft was hit in the engine room of a ship to disable it. Was that proportionate response? Could less, harmful, let's say, that would have created lesser number of casualties. Could that have been used? For example, normally when you want to stop a ship, you stop, you interdict, you fire from guns across the bows of that ship. You fire, what are called tracer ammunition and things like that to show your intention. You fly a helicopter close and tell that ship on international channels to stop. There are lots of things that can be done. So was it necessary straight away to fire a missile? So was the response both necessary and proportional? Because necessity and proportionality are principles of international armed conflict, and how they must, be done. So, prima facie, from all these accounts, it seemed that the US Navy completely overreacted in this case. That even if it had a sliver of a reason in suggesting that the ships had not complied with the blockade and they were carrying contraband to and from Iran, the response of hitting was far in with a missile, seems far in excess of what ought to have been done commonsensically. Of course, there are lots of other issues about international rules, where the correct rules followed, whether in international waters, seafarers, and we can address them. But to me, prima facie, it seemed that the US either grossly overreacted or disastrously erred.
So action was preventable,
I
if we can say.
certainly, yeah, you want to extend the question, or this is the question?
So this is the question. मतलब, the military action that was done should have been prevented.
Yes, I believe it not ought not to have happened. That
आउटपुट पे
the
ऑलराउंडर हैं, चाहे स्क्रिप्टिंग
commander
करनी हो, चाहे
on the
ब्रेकिंग न्यूज
spot
हो,
who
न्यूज राइटिंग हो,
took
अंडर
the
प्रेशर हो,
decision
मेजर कवरेज हो, टिकर
ought
हो,
to
सब
have
कुछ ये कर लेते हैं.
exercised
यही
better
आगे जब
discretion,
एआई आएगा ये
ought
चैलेंज
not
आएंगे
to have
बेसिकली.
ratcheted it
तो
up so
100%
much.
विदाउट
But
एरर
look,
होता है.
these
जब
are
भी इनकी जरूरत
individual
पड़ती है, चाहे
views. The
दिन हो, चाहे रात
commander
हो, चाहे
on
नाइट शिफ्ट
scene
हो, चाहे
has
वीकेंड हो,
several pressures.
ये हमेशा
It's
अवेलेबल होते
always,
हैं.
I mean, again I
ऐसे
say,
लोगों से थोड़ा सा बच
I
के
do
रहो.
not
ये जो होते हैं ना,
do
ये
not
सारा
agree with what
माहौल खराब
happened,
करते हैं.
and I believe that the deaths are
बिल्कुल
very
ट्रू
very
मल्टीटास्कर
sad.
हैं ये.
But at the same
और
time,
ऑब्वियसली
I
फिर
do not
हमारे लिए
believe
तो
in
बहुत बड़े एसेट हैं. कौन
rear
हो सकते हैं
seat
ये? कौन
advice
है ये?
to the
कौन है ये
commander on
रेबल?
the spot,
हाँ?
military commanders or whoever took the decision. They have
इनका नाम है
so
अनुराग
many
सिसोदिया. आइए.
inputs
जबरदस्त.
to
अनुराग.
weigh, and so many considerations.
अनुराग भी आते जाओ ना. अरे
In my
आपकी
view,
टीम के जो भी आ रहे
this
हो ना, आपने
ought
भी आना
not
साथ
to
में.
have happened. There are several other ways
अनुराग,
to stop a
ये क्या काम कर रहे हो?
non-compliant
ज़्यादा नहीं कर रहे?
vessel.
नहीं.
If these vessels were non-compliant, okay, or they were running the blockade, but to me clearly it was overuse of force.
So with World Seafarers Day approaching on June 25th, what are the biggest challenges seafarers face worldwide while operating in conflict zones? What should governments and ship companies do to keep them safe, sir?
I'm so glad that you brought out about the International Seafarers Day on the 25th of June, and we must remember that, because remember that seafarers are the most essential component of your global supply chain. 90% of world's trade happens over the seas. So if the ships did not deliver all the goods and cargo, and if the seafarers did not take them, the world, the interconnected, dependent world as we know today, where everything appears to our doorstep at the drop of a hat, or on the click of a button, would not have happened. So the whole world owes a debt of gratitude to seafarers for making trade possible. Now, therefore, international rules have laid down very clearly that shipping and commercial shipping must be allowed to pass unimpeded. They have rights of innocent passage, transit passage, and we can discuss each one of them. In fact, the whole principle of freedom of navigation is dependent. It is not just about a political or a military thing. It is also about the safety and security of seafarers. So certainly, I think it's very important to recognize what they do. What are the kinds of challenges they face? There are many. Seafarers frequently go into or are required to go into zones of conflict. Some of these conflicts are local, some of these may be regional. Now, in this case, there was a very pronounced conflict between US and Iran and Israel. But often there are other sorts of maritime security dangers. We must not forget, for example, the piracy that flared of the Gulf of Aden from 2008 to 12. More recently, then there are armed terror groups like the Houthis, for example, who have threatened maritime traffic at several points. Piracy had reared its heads in several other parts of the world too, west coast of Africa before Malacca Strait many years ago. So there are always these local hotspots where terrorism, other forms of maritime security challenges from local dawns, armed robbery when you are in the waters of another country, charging or discharging cargo, you can be attacked. So there are several dangers to seafarers, and I'm not even talking of the dangers of bad weather. There are also sometimes, due to communication problems, due to regulatory issues, seafarers are frequently detained, held for no fault of theirs. There's a very complex layer in which they operate. So seafarers face a lot of challenges. Also, in recent times, in wars, greater usage, for example, of drones and of missiles, what are called precision-guided missiles and drones, actually increases the danger for seafarers because you can stay far off and send missiles or drones, and often they can come, unwarned almost on the ship. So there are many dangers that seafarers face, and it is a global responsibility, Mohit. There's a
जी
need
सर.
for all the countries to ensure, and of course India is doing its bit, but this requires a global effort, because if we don't do that, then the world as we know will cease to exist.
So, coming to Indian maritime domain or Indian seafarers, what are their biggest challenges, and what role can the Navy, Indian Navy, play in safeguarding Indian sailors and merchant vessels during such crisis?
Okay, I'll answer that in two parts. Look, the strength of Indian seafarers is more than 3 lakh personnel. There are more than 3 lakh Indian seafarers all over the world. We are about 1/6 or 1/5 of the global seafaring community. Matlab, overall seafaring community is around 18-19 lakhs, and we are more than 3 lakhs. We are amongst the top 3 countries, along with Philippines and China, that contribute to the global seafaring world. So Indian seafarers are likely to be on many ships all over the world. Now, in sad contrast to this, that means while we provide crew and manpower across several ships in the world, in sad contrast to this, our EXIM trade, less than around 5%, 6%, at maximum people put it at 8%, but about 5% of Indian trade comes on Indian flag ships, which means the rest of your trade comes on foreign flag ship. We pay international shipping lines, charters about $75 billion for bringing our trade in. And our share of manufacturing, shipping, though we have more than 1,500 or so Indian ships, flag ships, that amounts to less than 2%, 1.2%, 1.3% of the global gross tonnage. So you see this imbalance. Because of this imbalance, where we are one of the top seafaring crew nations, while at the other time being not very much ahead in having our flagships or our produced ships, which means that bulk of Indian seafaring community is on foreign flag ships, right? I will give you a very recent example in the Gulf region, going by some statistics. There were 550 Indian seafarers on Indian flagships. About 13, 14, 15 Indian flagships were there, 550. But the overall Indian seafarers in the Gulf region amounted to 20,000. तो आप फर्क देखते हो कि they were on Indian flagships, there were about 500, 550. There were 19,000 plus on other foreign flagships. So Indian crews are frequently found on foreign flagships, and that raises a lot of complications. Second, these foreign flagships are often what are called flags of convenience. There are many countries जिसको हम बोलते हैं briefcase offices. आपको वहाँ जाना भी नहीं पड़ता है register करने के लिए. I mean, in this case, there were countries like Palau, Bahamas, there are Panama, there are Liberia. So there are many of these countries which are, called flags of convenience. The ships are flagged there, but then they become the sovereign entity of that country, right? To make matters worse, they are owned by entity of some other country. They are chartered by some other person in another country. They are operated by some person, another entity who could be from another country. The crew management is done by another company from another country. The crew itself could be a mix from several nations. Okay. So it is, I mean, you can describe it as very, very complex. You can call it a khichdi, but it creates a problem in identifying, okay, now, isme, if there is Indian crew in part or whole, and Indian crew will be there, as I told you. But how much can India do or intervene directly if it is not your flagship? Because after all, jurisdiction is of the flag state, right? Just as when Indians, millions of Indians, I think, who are there in Gulf states, now if they are attacked and many of them become tragic casualties, it becomes difficult for India to wage a war against whichever country has caused these casualties, because you will say they were there in another country or territory, right? So that is the problem here. I'm not trying to diminish the tragedy of Indian seafarers losing their lives, but it's a very, very complex situation in which our seafaring contribution is huge, but our own percentage of trade by Indian flag vessels is less. Now, in addition, like in every other profession, but in addition, often in the international maritime trade, many of these companies that operate are shadowy companies. They are dark entities. Okay. So they often like to take risks and operate like where there is terror problems, where there are these blockade or conflict problems, because there is incentive of greater money for those who are owning it or chartering it, but they are not the crew, right? So they make money but put their crew in danger, and often India falls into such dangers because they are not aware of these things. So these shadowy or the gray aspect in the international maritime world must also be taken note of. You know that again, Indians constitute about 20% nearly of the abandoned seafarers, जहाँ पे ओनर्स गायब हो गए हैं या ऑपरेटर्स गायब हो गए हैं बिना पैसा देके. So it is a somewhat tragic situation. I know this has been a very detailed answer. Now, what can the Indian Navy do? Look, the Indian Navy is 50, 60, 70,000 strong. We put our ships at all these places. We put them at hot spots. But can we be everywhere? No. Can you, like I said, apart from the jurisdiction, apart from the sovereignty issues, Now, if Indians are caught anywhere, if they need assistance, Indian Navy goes to rescue. And this is not just for Indian flagships. You saw that we put down piracy attempts. A few days
Yes, sir.
back, we defused a missile that had hit another ship. People forget how daring that can be. So the Indian Navy has actually been playing a huge role, particularly in this region, in the West Arabian Sea, in the North Arabian Sea. But if there are people caught in conflict situation, the Indian Navy can't get there without becoming then a part of the conflict or getting hit or one way being involved. It's necessary for the Indian Navy ships to stay away from the conflict arena. So where there are requirements to convoy, where there are requirements to escort, we do that. Where there are requirements, I'm not just talking of Indian Navy, Indian nation. We set up contingency plan, we get people as quickly as we can. If they have to be evacuated, we do it. If a helicopter or a boat has to go, we do it. If medical assistance has to be given, we do it. But remember, for all that we do, Indian seafarers are all over the world. You can't be there everywhere unless Indian Navy becomes, and that's true, in fact, of all nations. They can't react to every single person's
जी सर.
seafarer safety. तो इसमें मैं एक और बात दोहराना चाहता हूँ आपको कि while we must feel very bad about these three deaths, some sort of perspective is essential. Please remember that just a few months back in March, we lost a sailor due to Iranians attacking, I think, of Al-Faw. So there was another ship there that attacked. That was it, Mahavishnu या कुछ उसका first name था, but whatever it is. Remember then during Somali piracy that happened between 2008 to 12, I was posted in Nairobi. I saw that from close range. We lost about 10 to 12 people, I think, if I remember, in captivity or something like that. Then there were Indian sailors, I think 3 or 4, who died in a Houthi attack in 2024. What about the Indians who may have killed during the 8-9 year long Iran-Iraq war in the 80s? So what I'm trying to tell you is that Indian seafarers have had often to operate in these sort of situations, and it's not possible every time for the Indian government or the Indian Navy to do something immediately, particularly given the complexity of the situation.
जी सर. So, in the medium and the long term, what can India do to make shipping competitive and to avoid the situation of too many of our sailors going abroad, sir?
I'm so glad that you brought it. Please remember that seafaring is an attractive profession. At the end of it, it's a paying profession, and because it adds to global trade, it is a very good career to have, and both for men and women, and more women are joining it. I must tell you that. If you just want a statistic, in 2010 we were 60,000 or so seafarers. In 15 years, that figure has risen to 3 lakh plus. So 5
जी.
guna बढ़ गया है. Which is very good. It tells you that this is a profession on the rise. But what must we do to make it more attractive? One, of course, we must have a lot more Indian flag shipping. It's very, very simple. For that, it means you need to have more ships, manufactured and produced at a faster rate, at a huge industrial scale. अगर हमको maritime power बनना है, तो we need to do this, and they need to be Indian flag. We need to manufacture them fast, for which the government in recent years has been doing a huge to incentivize it. But also we need to make several other things, compliance issues, regulatory issues, insurance issues, much easier, ease of doing business for anyone who registers. Why do people register in flag of convenience? Because they think it's ease of doing business. Now, I'm not saying that all regulatory aspects must be forgotten, whether it is safety or environmental issues. No, but we must make it easy, transparent. Compliance should be easy to encourage Indian shipbuilding. We must therefore incentivize more number of seafarers to join on Indian flag ships. Also, remember, Mohit, we need uh, more say in Indian maritime, in world
Hmm.
maritime affairs, in global maritime issues. चाहे वो इंश्योरेंस कंपनीज में क्यों ना हो, चाहे वो इंटरनेशनल मैरिटाइम ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस में क्यों ना हो, चाहे वो पायरेसी रिपोर्टिंग में क्यों ना हो. You see, unless you become a part of the global administration of the maritime world, you know, you will not be able to sit on the high table. We are going there in many ways, but to take an analogy, just as after winning the Cricket World Cup in '83, steadily because the financial power of cricket went up, and today we dominate international decision making in cricket. You know,
Cricket. Yes, sir.
like that, I'm not saying dominate, but like that, I'm saying we must be on the high table, considering our global standing. And for that, we need to do a slew of well thought out strategic measures at the governmental, private levels, and so on. So maritime education, for example, much more, have more skilled manpower, I mean, workforce in the maritime world. So there are many things we can do to ensure this. And of course, quick response, reach back. In the short term, till we are able to achieve this, will take some years. Ensure greater oversight about companies in which people are joining. They must not join some shadowy companies, some fly by night
Hmm.
companies.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
You must ensure that the safety coverage, the insurance coverage is quick. I mean, you see the way country responds when aircraft is hijacked. Everyone
Yes, sir.
gets, whereas when a ship, because it is far away, or when a ship is hijacked, or ship is taken captive, or ship is attacked, because it's far off, that much national attention doesn't go. I'm not suggesting that we overreact. One of the things I'm not, please don't get me wrong, I'm not suggesting that this in any case happened, but in all the three ships that were attacked recently, there were certain question marks raised about whether they had met several
Hmm.
compliance standards, regulatory issues, and all, and that makes it a little difficult for the Indian government or DG Shipping or other national agencies to reach out. So greater oversight and greater scrutiny of the reliability, of the reputation of the agencies and shipping companies, because a lot of seafarers are from poor families, they don't know middle class, often they are not aware, and they join
Hmm.
some of this. I mean, I'm not suggesting it necessarily happened in this case, but that's something we need to be also cognizant about.
Ji, sir. So, what are the key lessons for India's national growth and renewal from this war and Operation Caesar? So,
The key lessons again I will take from the last answer. Just as we need to grow in several ways to become a maritime power, we are becoming a powerful navy. As you know, we are going to commission three ships, state of the art ships shortly on the 21st of June. We are becoming by every day a powerful navy. But to become a powerful maritime power, we need to do a lot more that I told you just now.
yes, sir.
Like that, the lessons, if you can take from this overall war or conflict, and indeed going back to Sindoor, is that uh, at the base level, there is no alternative to being strongly self-reliant, to
Hmm.
being, selfishly pursuing national interest agenda, because nobody may come to your help and nobody need come to you. So if you want to stand up to global bullying by whoever, by the hegemons, if you want to stand up to Dadagiri or prevent that, if you want to stop terrorism, if you want
Hmm.
to be a power for good, as I'm sure India would seek to become, okay, then also you need strength. And that strength can come out of military power, certainly, military power allied with a lot of hard power issues. It has to come from maritime power, it has to come from greater economic strength, and across a range of issues, whether it be semiconductors, reduced oil dependency. For example, can we have much more oil exploration of our coast? And recent, as you are aware, recent there are some indications of a find of east coast of Andamans. We need to
Yes, sir.
explore. We need to put more energies in that. Uh, Reduced oil dependencies abroad, greater infrastructure in India, whether it is transshipment ports, whether it is greater Indian shipbuilding, also non renewable, stress on other, non renewable resources and all that should reduce. Let's look at alternative sources of energy if we can. I mean, I'm not an expert in this, but I'm just saying that we need to, the storage capacity, for example. There's lots of debate about whether we have 75 days, 90 days, 100 days.
Hmm.
Hopefully, remember, the next conflict is always around the corner, whether it is regional or global, or even in which India is involved, though I hope it doesn't happen that way. So, whatever time we get in between, we must build up national strength in all these arenas, whether it is petroleum capacity, whether it's search for oil, whether it's more naval power, whether it's more military power, whether greater Atmanirbharta manufacturing in India at a huge scale, and you know, uh, and of course maritime power in a variety of ways.
Yes,
So
sir.
so India should tap to the seas much more.
So, as we during the discussion, you have emphasized on merchant shipbuilding. So, what are the cultural and structural issues governing merchant shipbuilding in India and their registration and other aspects, sir?
See, I think I have brought them out already, a lot of those issues.
Hmm.
One is that we need to produce rapidly at scale.
Hmm.
Merchant shipbuilding, design wise, they're not as complicated as warship building. They can come out in an assembly line if encouraged and incentivized. And I think the government is doing a lot, particularly in recent years, to do this. But if encouraged and incentivized, there is no reason why we cannot do it at huge scale. We must do it. You know, so the factors that are stopping us are that India is not across all echelons sufficiently maritime aware. क्या होता है जब ऐसे क्राइसिस होते हैं हॉर्मज के या गल्फ में,
Hmm. Hmm.
तब हमको समंदर याद आते हैं, नहीं तो फिर we are very continental in our outlook, for want of a better word. We don't realize across our peoples, across our bureaucracies, across several decision making structures, we don't realize how much the sea matters to us directly and indirectly. It's only such crisis that gets that to the fore, so to say. So therefore, make it easy to build a ship, to own a ship, to operate a ship. Don't reduce the bureaucracy involved. Don't have whatever are the number of forms that need to be filled. Yes, you must, like I said, I'm not arguing for dilution of whatever are the safety, environmental, or other regulatory issues, but make it easy for India to, I mean, in a completely different way. Why can't we become a cruise ships destination, cruise
Yes, sir.
industry destination? We talk of tourism, we talk of so many places, we talk of nice places, so we must aim to do that. And mind you, it's happening, several more transshipment ports. Of course, look at whatever are the ecological issues, but come to a quick decision on several of these issues. Dual use. We need to work. Their future is not about the military and merchant marine operating in silos. You might have to have dual use things. You might have to operate in closer coordination with each other and with several national agencies. Um, uh, Biofuels could be another area. There are lots of areas. So what I mean to say is, the maritime should figure on the consciousness on the radar horizon of not just the maritime community but of everyone else. तभी तो होगा, नहीं तो 3
Yes,
लाख
sir.
सीफेयरर्स हैं, 70-80 हजार आपके नेवी वाले हैं, कुछ और फिशरीज में हैं, but but what about the rest of the country? You know, the best invention for us may be developed by someone in the hinterland. So I believe that ancient India in many ways reflected that close coordination. That is why we were a great seafaring nation once upon a time. I think we need to
Yes, sir.
recover that mojo.
Yes, sir. Definitely, sir. Thank you so much, sir. It's always a valuable to have you on the show, sir. And you have made us understand the issues very deeply. And World Seafarers Day is on 25th, and I hope that the coming days will be better and for everyone, whether it is conflict, non-conflict, on every aspects for the seafarers, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you once again, sir.
Thank you. My pleasure being here, and my salute to all the seafarers.
Same, sir. Thank you.